The boy's hands trembled as he waited behind the thick velvet curtain, the muffled echoes of the audience rolling into his ears like distant waves. He was small compared to the massive stage that waited for him, and everything about his appearance spoke of a life that had been hard but honest. His shoes were worn, the laces mismatched, and his shirt had been ironed carefully, though its faded edges revealed it wasn't new. Back home, he used to practice this very song under a leaky tin roof where the rain became his background music, but now he was about to sing in front of thousands, under lights brighter than he had ever imagined. His heart pounded like a drum, so loud he thought others could hear it. The crew moved around him, their headsets buzzing with instructions, but no one stopped to comfort him. He was just another contestant, another name on the list, but for him this was the only chance to change everything for his family. He thought of his mother's hands, rough from washing clothes in other people's homes, and his father's tired face after a long day of labor. He thought of the siblings who sometimes went to bed hungry but still believed in him. Those thoughts became his courage, filling the space where fear tried to live. When his name was finally called, he stepped forward. The curtain opened, and the world exploded into light. The theater was massive, so much larger than the dusty community hall where he had first sung in front of neighbors. Thousands of faces stared at him, their eyes curious, some doubtful, some indifferent. The judges sat in front of him like giants, their expressions unreadable. Simon leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, scanning him in that way that made so many contestants falter. He gripped the microphone with both hands, grounding himself, his chest rising and falling as if he were about to leap off a cliff. The silence was crushing. For a brief moment, he wanted to run, but then he remembered the promise he had made to himself, that no matter what happened, he would sing with all his heart. The music began, the iconic guitar notes that belonged to a song much older than him, and when his voice finally broke free, it was as if the room itself leaned in to listen. It wasn't a polished sound like the stars on the radio, but it was real, raw, and filled with emotion drawn from a life of struggle. People stopped moving, conversation ceased, and even the harsh stage lights seemed to soften. His voice wrapped around the audience like a story they had all lived in different ways, and for the first time that night, the boy forgot his fear. He was no longer just standing on a stage, he was telling the world who he was. Simon shifted in his seat almost immediately, his sharp eyes locking onto the boy as though he had discovered a rare gem hidden in plain sight. The judges around him were visibly moved, one tilting her head with a hand pressed against her chest, another blinking back tears that threatened to spill. The audience began to lean forward too, drawn not only to the familiar melody but to the way this child transformed it. He wasn't mimicking the song, he was living it. Every lyric carried the weight of nights spent dreaming in darkness, of mornings spent working before school, of moments when hope felt too fragile to hold. His voice rose and cracked in just the right places, revealing not weakness but humanity. It was this imperfection, this raw honesty, that made it beautiful. The crowd began to react, slowly at first, a few claps during the chorus, then a wave of cheers that seemed to push him higher. By the second verse, his nerves had melted into the song, and his eyes closed as though he had left the stage entirely and was singing back home, on a dusty street under the open sky. One judge whispered to another, both shaking their heads in disbelief at what they were hearing. The boy's soul was laid bare, and the theater became a sanctuary, everyone gathered to witness a miracle unfolding in front of them. When he reached the chorus again, something changed. His voice didn't just sing, it soared. It carried the ache of poverty, the hope of a better tomorrow, and the dreams of a boy who had only ever wanted to be heard. Some audience members stood up, clapping rhythmically, and soon the entire theater seemed alive, united in the magic of the moment. Tears glistened on faces across the crowd, proof that his voice had touched something deeper than just their ears. The judges exchanged looks, realizing they weren't just watching a performance, they were witnessing history being made. The final notes hung in the air like golden threads, fragile yet unbreakable, and for a breathless moment there was nothing but silence. The boy stood there, chest heaving, his hands trembling around the microphone as he searched the judges' faces, unsure if he had done enough. Then, without warning, Simon leaned forward, his eyes locked with the boys, and slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. The sound of it cracked through the silence like a bolt of lightning, and instantly, the entire theater erupted into a roar. Golden confetti burst from the ceiling, showering down in endless streams that caught the light and sparkled like falling stars. The boy's eyes widened, disbelief painted across his face as the realization hit him: he had done it. His hands flew to his mouth as tears spilled down his cheeks, and his knees buckled slightly under the weight of the moment. The judges rose to their feet, clapping wildly, shouting words of praise that he couldn't even hear over the deafening cheers of the audience. One judge wiped her eyes openly, calling out that he was born to sing, another blew him a kiss with a beaming smile. Simon, who so often carried a mask of sternness, now stood with a rare softness in his expression, nodding at the boy as if to say, "I knew it." The confetti continued to fall, sticking to his hair, his shoulders, and his face, until he looked like he had been crowned in gold. He raised his arms slightly, not in pride but in surrender to the overwhelming love pouring toward him. The camera zoomed in on his tear-streaked face, the face of a boy who had just crossed the bridge from poverty to possibility. This was no longer just an audition, it was the start of a journey that would change not only his life, but the lives of everyone who believed in him. The cheers, the lights, the confetti, it all became a blur, but the feeling carved itself into his heart forever. He had come from nothing, but tonight, under the rain of gold, he had become everything.